A soliloquy for every movie, from Casablanca, Tommy Boy. He's here, it's him, it's Andrew Toy.
If you grew up in the 80s and 90s, then you were very familiar with Martin Short. From Father of the Bride, to Clifford, to Jungle, he seemed to be everywhere when we were kids. He was and still is the man who shows up unannounced on a TV show as a guest, and suddenly you sit up and everything comes to life. However, if you've read his autobiography called I Must Say, then you know, unfortunately, that his tragedy measures up with his hilarity. It's not a sob story or a feel sorry for me book. It's actually quite funny. But unfortunately, Martin Short has probably been to more funerals than you and I combined. When Martin Short was just 12 years old, he lost his brother, and then he lost both of his parents before the age of 20. Years later, he lost his wife, Nancy, and that's not to count all of his friends that have passed, such as John Candy, Catherine O'Hara, Rob Reiner, and now, most recently, his 42-year-old daughter, Catherine. I'm not trying to lionize Martin Short, but I do want to take a minute to recognize the laughter and the joy he has brought to this world despite all of these unbearable setbacks. And I'm sure that he has dealt with some heavy demons and some dark things in his life, but he's still committed to making people laugh, especially with his stand-up shows with Steve Martin and his show on Hulu, Only Murders in the Building. I watched the first season of that show, and it is a delightful little gem that pairs old-time humor with contemporary sensibilities. And it just sucks because I hate thinking of my comedy heroes in such pain. Like most other people, I grew up thinking that these people were impenetrable. They were gods who could evoke laughter in the hardest of times and the toughest of souls. Yet we grow up to learn that they're human just like us. And as much as we wish it, they're not immune to life's pains. And when I look at other celebrities who spend their off time moaning and bitching about things that don't even apply to them, and they take up these causes that just happen to be trending for the moment, and then they go on and they hate their audience and they abandon their friends and their family. And then they're likely on some sort of list that's flowing around out there. And then you look at the other famous people, the ones who have moved to make the world a better place just through the humble act of showing up on a stage. They're there to make people laugh and to bring a lighter sensibility to people's lives. Not just provide a more paganistic lifestyle for themselves like so many celebrities do. You probably have friends who are good people who just keep getting crapped on by life. And then you know the horrible people, the people who continue to fail upwards and every step they take seems to be a stroke of luck for them. We live in a world where when there's one Robin Williams, there's 10 Bill Cosbys. We lose John Candy, but then we get stuck with Harvey Weinstein for the next quarter century. And yet, there are celebrities amongst us who don't politicize their craft, or engage in online wars, or find themselves involved in one scandal after another. They're the ones who live quietly behind the camera, but they loom larger than life when they hear action. Martin Short is one such celebrity. Though, like Eugene Levy, I'm sure he doesn't really consider himself a celebrity. Martin Short, he didn't go to the tabloids and brag about how he was pulling out of acting to be a stay-at-home parent for his children after his wife died. I don't know Martin Short or his heart, but I would bet the very little that I have that he would trade his successful career to have his family back with him. If in 10 or 20 years, Martin Short decides to give a TED Talk, I want to be in that audience because I think he's one of the very, very few people on this earth who knows what's precious and what's fleeting. Now, if you believe in the healing power of Jesus, let's not only pray for Martin Short, though we very much should, but think of somebody else in your life, A good person who just keeps getting banged around by life, one loss after another. Now, I used to think it was cruel to invoke the name of Jesus in the wake of a tragedy, because how are we supposed to weigh Jesus' goodness with the tragedies and heartache of this world? But I've grown to learn that we really aren't expected to put the two together. Jesus took it upon himself to immerse himself in this world so that he could sympathize with the brokenhearted. There will be a day, he promises, when he will wipe every sad tear away, and all things will be made right again. Many will be reunited with their loved ones, and tragedy will finally die its final death. Now, I don't mean to get all churchy on you, but that is the truth that I believe in. Otherwise, without that hope, then what's the point in anything? I like to think that for people like Martin Short, his suffering will come to a standstill, and he'll finally get to savor the fruit of his labors for how much he's made people laugh and all the joy he's brought to the world. Anyway, it's just absolutely horrible. So just go buy a copy of his book. You can order that book on the affiliate link below. Do it not just to read the book, but also to support him. It's just one little way we can show him that we're standing up with him. And then watch a Martin Short movie. I recommend Clifford, or any of his appearances on Arrested Development as Uncle Jack. Thanks for letting me take a minute and talk about somebody that I deeply admire and that my heart is just absolutely broken for. I'll see you in the next video, and hopefully it will be much happier. Bye. When Martin Short was just 12 years old, he lost his brother. When Martin Short was just 12, I watched the first season of that show, and it is a delightful little gem that pairs old time.
Sorry.
Nah.